Ancient Egypt is a quite fascinating place in history. It is well known for majestic pyramids, lifelike mummies, intriguing mysteries, and notable pharaohs. Speaking of notable pharaohs, one of the most notable and perhaps the one with the most known achievements was Ramses II, who reigned from 1279 to 1213 BCE. Unlike the more iconic Tutankhamun, many things are associated with Ramses' reign. He held a quite ambitious military campaign. He made the first recorded peace treaty. He is associated with a lot of buildings and giant statues, like the ones in Abu Simbel, Karnak, Abydos, P. Ramses, and elsewhere. He lived to be in his 90s, which was quite old compared to a population where the average lifespan was below 40. He is widely considered to be the pharaoh during the time of Moses and the Exodus. According to National Geographic, he was even the father of more than 100 children. But if his life and reign wasn't interesting enough, his mummy and death still have surprises to store. In this video, I will talk about some interesting facts about the mummy of Pharaoh Ramses II. The first interesting fact about Ramses II's mummy was that this and his sarcophagus was not found in the tomb that was designed for him, which has been labeled KV7. In fact, it had been transferred multiple times. Originally, Ramses II was buried in his tomb by the Nile River. However, his sarcophagus was moved to his father Seti I's tomb in KV17. It remained there for around 80 years before it was moved again to the tomb of Ahmose and Hippi. The tomb was used as a cache before Ramses II was finally moved to the royal cache at Deir el-Bahari by the high priests of the chief god Amun. According to the American Research Center in Egypt, the tombs were cleared by the priests for much-needed raw materials and gold during a time of instability in the end of ancient Egypt's New Kingdom. This was under the guise of protecting the mummies from tomb robbers. In my opinion, this movement and stress might have led to deterioration of Ramses' body. This deterioration led his body to be moved once more, this time through international borders. This brings us to the next interesting fact. The second interesting fact about Ramses II's mummy is that it had a passport that was issued in 1974 so that it can go from Egypt to France to be inspected and restored to its original state fast. This is because the fungus removing procedure was only doable there and because of laws in both countries that required anyone leaving or entering to have passports. Therefore, despite the fact that Ramses II was dead for 3 millennia, the Egyptians had to issue a passport for him. In the passport itself, Ramses' profession was listed as king, deceased. Luckily, there was no legal trouble concerning this decision. However, just as recently as 2020, there was heavy backlash on the internet regarding the story. The photo you see on the screen right now is not of the actual passport, rather it was just an artist's representation that was posted on the archaeology blog Heritage Daily. No photos of the actual passport have been publicly revealed. Some people, in my opinion, probably took this as a lack of evidence for the actual passport. However, the articles of websites like National Geographic proved that the story is indeed true, it's just that the images are false. Due to this examination, more things are known about the mummy of Ramses, which brings us to the next interesting fact. Another interesting fact about the mummy is how well preserved it is. In fact, it is preserved well enough such that many of his physical features could be seen. For example, there are traces of evidence showing that Ramses II and other mummies related to him had red or ginger-colored hair. This hair color is associated with the gods, especially Set, the killer of Osiris. Ramses was quite fair-skinned, his nose was shaped like an eagle's beak, and his jaw was strong. He was quite tall for the time, with estimates ranging from 173 to over 183 centimeters. Just as recently as 2022, Ramses II's face was reconstructed using old CT scan data both at his age of death and at his peak in power at the age of 45. This was done at a high accuracy with an error of less than 2 mm and 70% of facial reconstruction as tested on living test subjects. The preservation of the mummy also shows how he died, which is what this next interesting fact is all about. It was originally believed that Ramses II drowned in the Red Sea while chasing Moses. At first, In the visit of the mummy to France, this seemed to be the case, since salt was found in Ramses' lungs. However, further investigation of the mummy belied this assumption. Ramses II already lived 50 years beyond ancient Egyptian average lifespan, so it is highly unlikely that he died accidentally, i.e. by drowning. Plus, his mummy was found in the royal cache in Deir el-Bahari, which is relatively far from the Red Sea. If he actually drowned, his body would be at a coastal area and it would probably not be mummified. Instead, it is far more likely that he died due to conditions that affect the elderly. According to the World History Encyclopedia, Ramses suffered from dental problems, severe arthritis, hardening of the arteries and, most likely, died from old age or heart failure. This was found by X-raying the mummy. The arthritis that was found on Ramses II was not the usual kind, but a variant that added bone over time and didn't affect the lower spinal joints much. The variant that he had was originally considered to be ankylosing spondylitis, but it was most likely that he had diffuse idiopathic skeletal hyperostosis, according to many sources. One last interesting fact about Ramses II's mummy was that it was given special care by the mummy makers, even compared to other pharaohs. His nose was probably preserved by placing small objects like seeds inside. Then his legs, arms, fingers, and toes were individually wrapped. The Book of the Dead was placed in his arms before the body was wrapped with a white cloth. Although there was great caution on the making of Ramses II's mummy, there were some mishaps that happened. These include accidental removal of the heart and having to sew it back in, and a spinal fracture that was found to be post-mortem. Still, the amount of care was fit for a king who led ancient Egypt to its final peak. This care was the reason why Ramses II's looks, physique, and cause of death are known to us despite the fact that he lived more than 3,000 years ago. Ramses II was quite a remarkable and known person, in life and in death. Over 3,000 years ago, when he was alive, he was known in Egypt for military gains, rebuilding, and prosperity. In the modern era, he is known for crossing international borders and revealing unseen stories. I think he is one of the most known and iconic pharaohs in ancient Egyptian history, right under King Tut, of course. But without him, none of these interesting facts would remain true.